This is Christy, and I'm the Director of Practitioner Support here at the Center. Today I'm going to take some time to talk to you about our Words Unlocked Poetry Initiative, focusing on the Curriculum and Teacher's Guide. Here we are at our home page on our Words Unlocked wiki space, and if we scroll down, we can see that there are some tabs you can click on. The first is the Teacher's Guide, followed by the 7-day poetry unit, our 1-month poetry unit, and our poetry contest. As we continue to build out the wiki space, there'll be an additional Publish tab to assist you with publication of student work. Let's go ahead and look at the Teacher's Guide. The Words Unlocked Teacher's Guide is divided into 6 sections. It begins with a unit overview, followed by assessments and rubrics, daily lesson objectives, daily lesson structure and materials, presentation formats, and teacher tips. Let's take a look at our unit overview. As you can see, you have a choice of 2 curriculums, the 7-day poetry unit and the 1-month poetry unit. Both poetry units expose students to poetic works and guide them to both write and perform their original poetry. The 7-day poetry unit, though, focuses on poetic devices that lend themselves more to spoken word poetry. The 1-month poetry unit goes much more in depth and explores a variety of poetic devices, as well as looks at poetry as social commentary. Let's pull up both of those wiki pages and see how they look on our site. Here's the 7-day poetry unit. It begins with a unit calendar, which we'll look at in a minute. And if we scroll down, you can see you have everything to implement the lessons. You have a formal, detailed lesson plan, student handouts, as well as a variety of presentation materials. If we move all the way to the bottom, you'll see an optional additional day, which is a poetry workshop. When we look next at our assessment and rubrics section, the rubric that I'm referring to is located here. Let's take a look at our 1-month poetry unit. It's set up in much the same way, although there's an anthology. And the rubrics and assessment materials that I'm referring to next are all located here. Let's move forward to assessment and rubrics. The 7-day spoken word style unit includes do-nows, classwork, and student checklists to monitor student progress, as well as the following rubric, which is located in the optional poetry workshop we just looked at. And here it is. Our 1-month poetry unit includes everything that's included in the 7-day unit, but we additionally have 3 quizzes on day 5, 10, and 14, as well as a final unit assessment on day 18. The following scoring rubrics that I'm about to show you are located in the Poetry Anthology folder we just looked at. Here's the Poetry Anthology rubric for your reference, the Poetry Analysis Paragraph rubric, and finally the Completed Anthology rubric. Let's look next at daily learning objectives. Each day has a daily learning objective, and if you wanted to look overall at everything that's covered in the unit, there's a calendar in both the 7-day unit and the 30-day unit. Let's take a look at the 30-day unit calendar just to see what that looks like. As you can see, each day has the student objective, as well as any assessments that may be taking place on that day. And that's mapped out for you for the entire month. Looking at daily lesson structure and materials, I want to let you know that we've provided detailed lesson plans for each day of each of the units. These lesson plans follow a 5-step lesson structure that begins class with a warm-up or do now, follows with a whole class mini lesson, guided practice, independent practice, and a formal closing to class. Just to demonstrate how a lesson plan looks, let's go ahead and look at day 1 of our month-long unit and move through that. Each lesson is tied to the Common Core standards, and those are outlined in the beginning of each lesson plan. It's then followed by our lesson objective and assessment for that day, as well as some key points. The next section looks component by component, beginning with our do now, our mini lesson, guided practice, independent practice, and closing. Please notice that at the end of each detailed lesson plan are ideas for differentiation that are included within the student materials. Let's take a moment now to go ahead and look at the various presentation formats that we're providing. We've included 4 ways to present classroom lesson information to your students: Smartboard slides, Promethean active board flip charts, PDFs, and Word 97 2003 documents. Just to give you a little taste of what that looks like, let's go ahead and pull up our Smartboard presentation for day 1. As you can see, these presentations are ready-made. They begin with an agenda and then move through the do now, the objectives for the day, thoughts to start the day, and then move all the way through the lesson. Looking at our last section, which is teacher tips, we do go ahead and focus in on our guided notes. Any notes that the students are to take as part of a daily lesson are Cornell style, and they have a guided structure. This is a really great way to differentiate the learning process, especially for students who find note-taking challenging, whether that is due to attentional difficulties, visual motor integration, or a variety of other reasons. An excellent source of additional information is located at the Intervention Central website, which we have a link to here. There are also a lot of other great ideas for differentiation. The next section of our teacher tips just talks a little bit about our referenced poetry. I urge you to go ahead and review all of the referenced poetry for relevancy. If you feel that the works we've selected would not be of interest to your students, please feel free to replace them as you see fit. Some really good ideas and good resources for that are the Poetry Foundation, which you can browse poems by poetic device, region, as well as the Academy of American Poets and Poetry 180. Poetry 180 is based out of the Library of Congress, and it has 180 poems selected by Billy Collins, who's our former U.S. Poet Laureate, and he picked these poems with American high school students in mind. These are just some ideas of some basic student materials that you may want to have at their disposal. And finally, we mentioned the video clips. Always preview the video. Make sure that it's relevant and appropriate for your students. And it's always a good idea to show the whole video first to give students a good idea of what you're going to be focusing in after you have them look at individual sections. I just want to take a moment to bring up our student handout, just so you can see how that may look. Here are the student handouts for one of the days of our units. And as you can see right here, these are the guided notes that I referred to. So you as a teacher have all of these notes filled in, but there are handouts for students where they can fill in some of the missing information and stay engaged while you're teaching that material. There's the do now that starts out with. And then as we move down, you can see that there are some independent work sheets for the students to complete in terms of creating their own poetry. Everything is right there provided for you. And that brings us to the end of our teacher's guide. I'm sure we'll be back with additional screencasts to assist you or walk you through other aspects of our wiki space. Thanks for joining.